Bond. James Bond. Shaken, not stirred.
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
For your eyes only, darling.
I never joke about my word 007.
For England, James?
Come in, Univex. James Bond here.
Am I going to have a problem with you, Bond?
Allow me to introduce myself.
You're that secret agent! That English secret agent from England!
No, you're cleverer than you look.
Still better than looking cleverer than you are.
My God, what's Bond doing?
I think he's attempting re-entry, sir.
007 reporting for duty.
Hello, the name's Berkeley, Ziggy Berkeley, from Cinema on the Rocks. And with me is Eric Dewey from Socially Awkward Studios. And you are listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Full Ride Radio Network. That's right, this is the show where we eventually talk about bondage, James Bondage, 007 Bondage. And you are listening to the single most cursed episode in the history of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast.
I was trying to count. Is this our lucky 007 attempt at
No, we
recording
passed that.
Oh,
this
really?
This is either number 009 or 10.
We've gone into double digits for you guys, folks, so please enjoy this episode. We have tried very hard to bring it to you.
Yes, this episode is now the cursed episode, also known as More Fun for the Whole Family.
You know who
Basically,
I blame? SCUM. I blame SCUM.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say I blame SCUM for our problems. I think they've had a hand in disrupting us.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And we will be getting to them shortly. But we have been trying to bring this episode to you since October of 2014. If you are listening to this on the day that we are finally going to be releasing it, it is now February of 2015. We have scheduled recording this episode several times. We have attempted to start recording this episode at least 3. We have had internet outages. We have had the recording get recorded over when we started trying to record and had to stop. We have had prep issues. We have had health issues, family issues. We have had holidays show up. And as Eric has alluded to, I'm pretty sure Scum showed up at the door and the dog Scumball actually peed on the recording once.
Sure.
It's possible the way it's been going. So this is literally the 9th or 10th time we have tried to record the More Fun for the Whole Family episode.
Yeah, but on the bright side, this should be a fun episode because we are talking about the side of the Bond universe intended for more than just your typical 18 to 30 whatever movie-going audience. This is the James Bond universe meant for the youngins and the teens and the tweens and everything in between.
Yes, that's right. We're taking our oversexed alcoholic assassin and making him accessible to your children.
Absolutely. As it should be. Wait, oh.
Yes, and we're going to do that through the realm of video games, cartoons, and a very special surprise that a lot of you probably forgot was associated with James Bond in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I know I had no clue that particular thing was involved in the James Bond universe, we'll say. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think we're going to start with the video gaming industry and how that ties in to the James Bond universe. Probably one of the most known tie-ins.
Indeed, because as many members of our audience know, James Bond has made his way into video gaming consoles and PCs in many, many different forms, and we've already talked about one of them in a previous episode. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to look in on 007 Legends, yes, which was released as a tie-in to Skyfall. Mm-hmm. In fact, it takes place basically during the opening credits of Skyfall. You can definitively say that is when this video game takes place, during the credits, because the premise behind it, and to me this is one of the most interesting and fun premises I've heard for a video game in quite some time. Basically, when James Bond gets, of course, shot by Moneypenny.
Spoiler!
Just kidding. In the first 15 minutes of Skyfall. And we see that during the opening credits, while Adele is, singing at us, that he's going through some kind of fever dream, mm-hmm, and kind of figuring out who he is. Well, this game goes deeper into that and decides that he remembers his past as an agent. Now, of course, this is kind of playing with canon a little bit because Casino Royale hit the hard reboot switch, so nothing that happened before ever happened. But since he's doing this death fever dream type thing, he can have an imagination. And what happens is Bond is hallucinating, dreaming, remembering 5 different adventures from the past of the old canon. And we basically then have Daniel Craig, who does indeed voice 007 throughout this game, and the modeling of the 007 character is based on him. And we also have Judi Dench's M, and we have many other fabulous guest stars, and some okay guest stars in this as well. But we have Daniel Craig's James Bond reliving one movie from each of the other actors who have played 007 in the official Eon canon. So, from the era of Sean Connery, we have Daniel Craig in a modernized Goldfinger. From George Lazenby, we have on Her Majesty's Secret Service. From Roger Moore, we have Moonraker, featuring Richard Kiel as guest star Jaws, and Somji Lasers.
Pew, 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 pew.
And then we have him reliving License to Kill from the Timothy Dalton era, also featuring Carrie Lowell as Pam Bouvier. And then we have, from the Pierce Brosnan era and some questionable judgment, Die Another Day.
Now, I can understand why they didn't go with GoldenEye, since obviously there's already been a GoldenEye game and then a GoldenEye game reboot. So I can understand why they didn't pick GoldenEye for the Dalton or for the Brosnan flick, but they had other choices. They had other choices. They didn't have to go with Die Another Day. But they didn't consult me first. Surprisingly enough, normally EA or Activision, whoever it was, calls me up and they say, "Eric, listen, we're thinking about making a Bond game." They didn't make that phone call this time around. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I'm guessing that, your phone number did change recently.
That must be it. That's the only explanation. The only possible explanation. We'll go with that. That's a good call.
I think so, too. Yeah. But, so we have Daniel Craig reliving all of these movies and they're modernized. And to me, both of these items together are just, like I said, it makes for one of the most fascinating premises for a game I've run across in quite a while. Because for me, my preference when I play any sort of game is that I like a story-based game, whether the mechanics of the game are the first-person shooter or MMO or even turn-based adventure. Like, I have been, and occasionally still relapse into being a Civilization addict. My favorite version is Call to Power, by the way. I not only like the strategy of the game, but I like the story of the game. You're building up your civilization, and depending on the choices you make, how you want to set it up, you can make yourself a little history in there. And I think that's cool. So even that kind of strategy game, I can turn into a story. And in MMOs, Star Wars Old Republic, you're building on some of the best modern mythology that's out there, and I think they've done a fabulous job of turning those characters into something that's very replayable. It's basically you're living a Star Wars movie. This is what I think billion of us have dreamed of since we were children. So I like that kind of game.
Right. And
so for me, when I stepped into this game, I really appreciated not just being able to walk into Goldfinger and, go out through that story, but also the twist they made to it to modernize it, because you're bringing it basically 60 years forward. And they do a very good job of it because you have the modern technology. Goldfinger's the first movie you wake up in. And you have Daniel Craig waking up from some kind of haze, and there he sees Miss Masterson painted gold on a bed, but it's in a modern-looking room, and his cell phone is ringing. So automatically this is not back in the 1960s. This is the modern era. And they update Goldfinger's story to reflect something from the modern era. Now, with that said, they still make it retro enough so you've got that 60s feel. So It's a really nice marriage there. And I do have to compliment the game's costume designer, because they got the mechanics of Pussy Galore's virtual underwire bra down to a science. When you see Pussy Galore on your screen, go on, run that one in front of your children. No, when you see Pussy Galore on your screen, yes, you do have graphics that aren't quite photoreal quality, because we play this for the Xbox 360, by the way. That is important later on. It is available on multiple platforms, but 360 is what we went with. But when you see her on the screen, yeah, you can tell she's a computer model, but from the neck down, man, they got that perfect. I mean, just the mechanics of this are something else. I mean, put this next to a photo, and yeah, it's there. And considering the engineering that was involved in that costume to begin with, that's something else.
Some very talented people were put to good work in this. But yeah, speaking to the modernization, I really like, there are some games and shows and things like that, and even movies, I believe, that are doing this type of thing where they're basically, kind of bringing older things into the modern era, but not all the way, not just a straight up hard, okay, this person's now in this time frame. I think the best example right now is the series Gotham on TV. It's obviously set in the quote-unquote past, because Bruce Wayne's a kid. He's not Batman yet. He's Bruce Wayne. But yet, kind of like with 007 Legends, everybody's got cell phones. Everybody's got everybody's got some of these modern technologies, yet you still do see them using some older technologies too. So you get this kind of sense that it's kind of out of time. And especially in this situation where it's essentially a dream or a hallucination, it makes perfect sense for it to be out of time like that. For him to be thinking about an old mission but have the new technology that he would be using on a day-to-day basis now. And so I really kind of dig that. I dig the fact that what it does for me is it kind of immerses me in the story a little bit more, because I'm not thinking about how out of place any one thing is. Everything seems to fit together within itself and take me out of my standard reality and suck me into the story and kind of keep me there. So it's kind of a different thing. It's like if it's just one thing here or there, if it was completely set in the 60s, everything was 60s, and then all of a sudden a cell phone popped up out of nowhere, then I'd be like, hey, wait a minute. And that would take me out of the story. But the fact that they meld it so well, it sucks you in instead of kicking you out. And I dig it.
I very much agree. And I'll give you a couple more movies, actual movies that do that as well for people who want to take some side trips. There is a movie which I absolutely love. This is, in fact, one of my stylistic favorites. And this is one that Roger Ebert championed very, very much as well, which is very unusual for a critic on an international stage to step up and just advocate like hell for a movie. But he really did for this one, Dark City, which is very much a movie out of time. It feels like it's somewhere between the Roaring 20s. No, wait, that's the 50s. No, wait, this is science fiction. We're in outer space. What the heck? It's just all of it together. It's a very wonderful meld of different styles and times all together, and they just mix into create something unique. And then if you're just going for super cool factor, and this movie is all about style, I'm not going to claim it's a good movie in terms of it doesn't have the best plot, but it does have some interesting performances. Streets of Fire from the early mid-1980s, directed by Walter Hill. Yes, the same guy who did 48 Hours and who was also behind producing some of the Alien movies. It's basically a meld of the 1950s and the 1980s. Very, very basic plot. You have a female rock singer played by a young and very attractive Diane Lane, who gets kidnapped by a motorcycle gang headed by Willem Dafoe. So her ex-boyfriend, played by Michael Pare, has to get together with her current boyfriend, played by Rick Moranis, in one of his only dramatic roles. Yes, dramatic roles, to rescue her. Now, this movie is all over the place, but in terms of melding retro and what at the time was modern style, it's just super. It's like walking into a jukebox. That's basically what I can say. So if you're into stylistic movies, check that one out.
All right. I'll definitely have to give that a look at some point.
But as far as 007 Legends goes, like I said, the story hooked me. And that was the reason why when I was looking for a game to pick for this cursed episode, that's why I chose this one. And it was an unusual choice because I didn't have an Xbox 360, but this was an excuse for me to pick one up since I saw it on sale and kind of wanted to anyway. So this just kind of pushed me over the edge.
There you go.
And then I remembered why I hadn't bought one before, aside from expense. I am a PC gamer. That's what I do. I play PC games. So the controls for an Xbox 360 suck. So I spent the first hour and a half of trying to play this game just dying constantly, because my personal viewpoint is when I'm playing a game, I expect the character's head to be parallel to the ground and stay that way no matter how I move, rather than lolling about as though I have no neck muscles whatsoever. So, no, on the Xbox 360, one of the joystick controllers is in fact just for your head, and if you do nothing with it, your head will loll about, and you will have no neck muscles, and you will die a lot, real fast.
Well, if you had no neck muscles, I mean, that's just realistic. If you had no neck muscles whatsoever and were trying to do a secret mission, you would probably die. So, neck muscles are good, ladies and gentlemen. Always have neck muscles when you're going into a secret operation.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have as much problem with the control as far as conversion from PC gaming to 360 gaming. My problems with the controls were that I just don't game that much at all. The majority of my gaming is either mobile or something like Hearthstone, where it's a card-based game. Yeah, it's on the computer, but essentially I'm playing Magic with people online. That's basically what it comes down to. And I love it. I love those kind of games. I do like these type of games as well. The first-person shooters, the story type of games. I've always enjoyed, like, your traditional side-scrollers, things like Mario and whatnot. But I haven't played any of them in quite some time. I'm not caught up to date. So there's a lot of... it's a pretty steep learning curve, I think, for someone like me who's coming in from not really playing these games to trying to control these people, especially, like you said, there's an entire controller just for your head. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with the rest of these buttons? I'm used to, okay, A, B, and a D-pad. I'm good to go. You give me like 40 buttons, 3 directional pads, 2 analog sticks, and a partridge in a pear tree, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, so after an hour and a half, I finally got savvy enough that I made it more than 300 virtual yards before I croaked. And believe me, that was a lot of effort to say I have to keep going. Because I did not want to come into this episode and say, yeah, I made it for what a real player would make for maybe 3 minutes and I died. So no, I stuck it out through the first half of the Goldfinger story. So yes, I'm admitting here that I've only made it through 10% of the game. However,
and that's further than me. Yeah, we haven't gotten too terribly far into the game ourselves. I do think I want to reach out to a couple of people I know who happen to be much more avid gamers than myself, and see if they might be willing to do a guest written review that we might be able to throw up later for 007 Legends from a more gamer heavy perspective. Something I've been thinking about actually just earlier today, but something maybe on the horizon. Maybe we'll have a guest writer in on the website to do a real gaming review of this game. But what you get right now is a couple of guys who don't game all that much on the 360 anyway, talking about it, and it's still fun. It's still a fun game. So, yeah,
I mean, even once I got past all the dying, I really started to enjoy it. And the thing is, again, from a James Bond perspective, I can tell you that this is a game that's worth checking out, especially if you are more familiar with the controls. Now, from what I've been told by some avid gamers who have gone through the entire game, one thing is, compared to many first-person story-based shooters, the story mode in this plays really fast. So if you're not total noob sauce like we are, at least on this game, now on PC games, I'd kick his butt. But in terms of... if you're not total noob sauce on a 360, this is supposed to be playable through in 5 to 6 hours. If you're really, really good. Now, otherwise, it's and so basically you're looking about an hour and change per movie. For me, I spent about 3 hours making it through the first half of the first movie.
That's value. That's value right there. That means you got extended gameplay out of it.
But again, the story is interesting. I like the modernization. I like the character interaction. And another thing I appreciate from a gaming mechanics perspective is it's not just straight up shooting, which I like, because when it's just nothing but shooting, I think it gets boring really fast. This is one of the reasons that I don't do as many first-person shooters. In fact, the last one I really, really enjoyed thoroughly was Dark Forces. Yes, that's right, the very first Star Wars first-person shooter based on the Quake engine. But what I appreciate about this one is you have breaks between shooting modes, where you have to go in and you're interacting with characters, so you're participating in a story, something I like, and then you also have puzzle moments. And during the moments when you have to solve a puzzle, like either find the hidden object or crack open the safe or download the data, you're not being shot at. And I really, really appreciate that. One of the things that really annoyed me when I was playing Bloodstone for our previous Fun for the Whole Family episode was that as I'm trying to get through this bloody lock, I have to worry about getting shot at. And here, once you're in the spot where you're trying to solve the puzzle, you just get to concentrate on solving the puzzle. And for me, I really appreciate that. Now, with that said, there isn't much of a manual with this, so you are going to pretty much have to teach yourself how to use that damn cell phone, whether it's get biometrics or download data and such. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually kind of a cool tool. I like how they use it. I like how it plays in. And yeah, it's a little over the top, but hey, Bond gadgets are supposed to be. Now, the one piece of gaming mechanics that some people may take issue with, and I'm kind of 50-50 on, is that when you get to the major moments of the story, the major scenes, as it were, where you have the climactic battle, it's on rails. So, now, it's not quite to the level where Bloodstone was, where you would have, you have a chase, there's only one way to go, and you're basically being dragged through the scene.
Right.
In this game, when you have one of those moments, you can die. So it's possible to die when you're in the middle of one of these scenes. Like, I got to the part where Oddjob and I first meet. Oddjob throws his hat, and if you don't duck just the right way, you're dead. That said, there's only one way to duck, and if you're not playing in 007 mode, the game will tell you how to duck. So at that point, you're on rails, and all you can do is follow the cues on the screen, do what you're told. If you don't do what you're told, you're dead. For some people, this will piss them off.
Yeah. I can definitely understand that, especially from a more avid gamer perspective. They don't necessarily. If you're going to make it so specific, then just make it a cutscene. If you're going to make it a scene that you actually have to play through, at least have a couple of ways to get through it. Maybe there's one way that gets through fastest and best, but at least, to automatically die, basically, if you don't do exactly what they want you to do at exactly that moment, is kind of lame. Even from a perspective of somebody who doesn't game all that much, still, it's like either do a cutscene and just show me what I'm doing, or let me play it and have a chance at getting through it on my own. But it seems kind of halfway in between there. It's like, we're going to let you play it, but if you don't do exactly what we say, you're going to die.
And now, as far as playability, again, for avid 360 gamers, it's supposed to play pretty quick. For noob sauce like me, as far as to the 360, because again, if this were a PC game, I'd kick butt. But since I'm on a 360, and it's not available for PC, like I said, I made it halfway through the first movie, so I made it 10% of the way through the game, and I kept getting insta-killed once I got to Fort Knox. I mean, I lasted no more than 45 seconds, and I did reach the this point. But I'm enjoying the story. I would like to continue. Unfortunately, and I have pride, I don't cheat at games until I reach a point where I either have to quit or cheat, and I like this story enough that I want to experience it, so I'm begging for cheat codes. The only cheat codes I have found are for the multiplayer mode to get you extra weapons or unlock certain characters so you can play as Pussy Galore early on, because let's face it, who doesn't want to be Pussy Galore?
Be her? I don't know, but tell you what, if you unlock that and we play again, you can feel free to play as Pussy Galore, and I will hunt you down and enjoy the view as I shoot you.
Not really going to think about that all too much, but anyway, I've only found cheat codes for that. So, if anyone out there in Listenerland has a cheat code for the Xbox 360 version of 007 Legends that works in story mode and will basically give me God mode privileges so that I don't freaking die and can walk through and enjoy the story, I'd really much appreciate it. You can email those to me at ziggy@cinemaontherocks.com.
Feel free to carbon copy Eric at 4-Eyed Radio when you send those in, too.
And if you really feel like being nice and telling the rest of your fellow audience members, you can also post it to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Her Majesty's Pod. Mm-hmm. You can also post it to the website in the comments under this episode at hermajestiespod.com. And hey, while you're on the interwebs, if you aren't already, why not? please follow us on Twitter at Her Majesty's Pod.
He sends the running theme there. It's pretty much Her Majesty's Pod for everything. The website, the Twitter, Facebook, everything is Her Majesty's Pod. As long as you remember that, you'll find us online.
Indeed. And like I said, please get me those cheat codes, because I've reached the point where I have no pride anymore. Speaking of having no pride anymore, the other thing you can do with this game is there is a multiplayer mode. Mm-hmm. And, of course, being a first-person shooter, multiplayer mode is built around the first-person deathmatch. So you can play against a friend of yours, like, for example, Ziggy versus Eric. And you can find yourself in one of the major set pieces from one of the films. The ones that we ended up taking ourselves into were the Goldfinger Fortress and the Ice Palace from Die Another Day. Yes, one of my least favorite locations, but it works for this movie. For this game. I ended up playing as Baron Sandy for my death matches, and Eric ended up playing as Oddjob, and Eric kicked my ass.
I think the biggest factor in that was actually that I figured out how to use the map in the corner before you did. I was chasing you down because I was like, oh, hey, look, little red dot. I bet you that's him. And it wasn't until we've been playing for a while.
You were also pretty good with the hat.
Yeah, I was getting better with the hat. I was getting better with the aiming in general. And the fact that one of the things you could do was throw the hat was pretty awesome.
So over the course of about an hour, I won twice, and Eric won about 100 times.
I don't think we played quite that many matches, but you definitely got farther into story mode than me, and if we were doing it on a side-by-side timed game, you would probably kick my ass on the actual playthrough.
Well,
but,
on the other hand, I did get my revenge at Trivia Crack.
You and the Trivia Crack! Well, I've made a bit of a comeback. I've managed to steal a couple of games from you, so yeah.
I may have gotten the 25 victories in a row achievement against Eric.
Dang it. Gosh, expand your pool a bit, man. Play with some other people. Gosh, don't just beat me.
I am. I've beaten Steve and Eric, Steve and Matt, your co-hosts on Socially Awkward Studios, also on the Fern. I've beaten them a few times as well.
Well, now you have. You started out just beating me. Gosh. Anyway.
But that is those are basically my thoughts on 007 Legends for Xbox 360. Do you have any other things you'd like to share?
Really, I just want to give the general sense that I really did enjoy the game. I didn't get to play through very much yet. It is still on my agenda to do so. It's just a matter of time. I work a lot, and when I'm not working, I'm doing stuff for the network, and when I'm not doing stuff for the network, I'm doing stuff for other things, and my gaming time is extremely limited. That's why I like games where I can play either on my phone or on a tablet or something like that, where I can just kind of, wherever I happen to be, just play. Oh, I can play for a few minutes here and there. This isn't one of those things, so I have to have some time to strictly set aside to play the game. But I want to do that. Also, the multiplayer mode, definitely a ton of fun. If you enjoyed the original Nintendo 64 GoldenEye, which I did immensely, you're going to love this because it has a lot of those classic elements, but it is updated and revamped, obviously, with the newer graphics. It's the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 and on the Wii U, so it's not like top of the line. It's not the Xbox One or PlayStation 4 type of graphics, but it's still head and shoulders above what you got on the 64.
And cleavage.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not forget the cleavage.
It's even quite a bit better than the revamped GoldenEye version that they put out on the Wii, I believe. So definitely highly recommended if you enjoy shooting your friends and throwing razor-sharp hats at one another. As far as story mode goes, so far so good. Maybe I'll report back if I ever actually finish the game.
And again, if you know any cheat codes for anything other than multiplayer, please share. Then we might actually finish story mode for you.
There you go. Then we can really talk about it.
Indeed. But moving on then, that brings us up to the next element of fun for the whole family. Yes, it is everybody's favorite theme song. In case you haven't guessed what it is, here's a hint. Eric, cue it up!
Bond. James Bond Jr. No one can stop him, but SCUM always tries. Young Bond cuts through each web of spies.
And there you have it. Yes, everybody's favorite James Bond music ever. It is the theme from James Bond Jr.
Young Bond?
No, that's a book series. We haven't talked about that yet. Maybe it'll happen, but no. Now, when we first started talking about James Bond Jr., it just came up in conversation while we were doing other episodes, and it only came up as a joke. And I don't think you ever...
What a twisted joke it became.
I don't think you ever thought I would seriously bring it into the show.
What a twisted joke it's become.
Yes, now, of course, we did the first 007 episodes in our very first Fun for the Whole Family show.
Yep.
And a funny thing happened between that show and the curse that is this one. Because we watched those episodes, and admittedly, they were bad.
They are quite bad.
I mean, they're not good. I mean, they're incredibly cheesy. And yet, I think in the time between then and when I said, hey, let's do another one of these, because you were on that like flies on crap. I mean, you were just right there. You were just like, yeah, sounds good. You notice that? Because
I'm a glutton for punishment, evidently. Yeah, it's one of those weird things. Like, we watched those first 7 episodes, and I left thinking, oh my gosh, thank goodness that's over. I'll never have to look at another one of those again. And then a month or so passes, and I find myself humming the theme song and thinking, maybe I got 15 minutes to spare. Maybe I should fire up another episode of James Bond Jr. And I was like, no. I'm not going to do that to myself. Let me have this moment where somehow I remember it as something other than a crap fest, and I won't ruin it by actually watching it. So then when you suggested that we do some more for this episode, I was like, all right, yeah. And then I started watching it, and I was like, oh, yeah, now I remember.
But it's one of those things, it's grown on us both, I think, like a fungus. And one thing that I noticed, and ever since we watched those episodes, when we make James Bond jokes, we make way more James Bond Jr. jokes with each other than we do about regular Bond. I mean, like when something goes wrong, like for example, this episode being cursed, is it a Blofeld plot? No. Is it a Spectre plot? No. It's SCUM. It's always SCUM. And it's always the agents of SCUM that are effing up our day. It's just grown. It's just gone into our personal lexicons. And on Facebook, if you go through some back posts, you'll find that we invented a rap for Odd Job.
Yes, Odd Job, the rapping henchman. Oh,
I have fantastic. Actually in my head, and no, I'm not going to share it with you, the audience come up with an adult version of the James Bond Jr. theme song.
That'll be on a very special episode of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast.
It's just one of those things. We can't escape it. And so here we are again discussing Bond, James Bond Jr. Now, one thing that I thought was a very interesting observation that you made shortly after we recorded that first Fun for the Whole Family episode is that James Bond Jr. really is an updated version of Richie Rich.
It really kind of is. It's basically very, very similar. You've got this essentially rich kid who gets away with damn near everything, going to this private school, which evidently he never actually has to be at the school, other than for his buddy IQ to give him a new watch, because he needs a new watch every single episode. But yeah, it's very similar. And then you add in the Bondinosity of the actual James Bond Jr., which still bugs me that James Bond is supposed to be his uncle, not his father, so he's not a junior. I don't know. That part's
And James Bond was an only child.
Yeah, there's that as well. So evidently he's like a nephew-in-law, I guess. I don't know what he is. I don't know how he got to be called James Bond Jr. when he is no direct blood relation to James Bond.
Now, I'm not saying that there aren't any James Bond Juniors out there, because if you follow the literary canon, there's at least one, and let's face it, he's left enough deposits that I'm sure there's been some interest in the bank.
Most likely, yes. I don't recall any use of prophylactics in any of the films or books, so I would be willing to bet that at some point, we know he's capable of it on account of the one that we do know about. So, yeah, there's probably a few.
Yeah, and really the only thing we're missing for the Richie Rich comparison to be complete is he needs a dog named Dollar, or in this case probably Sterling. But And then something else that I noticed as well is, of course, after hearing that lovely theme song, which you will never get out of your head again, ever.
You're welcome.
They say that James Bond is always chasing scum around the world. But if you really look at these episodes, is it about James Bond chasing scum around the world? Or is it about a bunch of assholes who just can't leave these spoiled rich kids alone and keep trying to ruin their field trips?
Yeah, they never travel to go fight the scum plots. They're traveling, usually for a school field trip or for whatever reason, either a school field trip or just to sneak away from the school and go do something. And then scum happens to be there or shows up for whatever reason. They're like, oh, we're gonna go fight scum now. They're like, no, we're gonna go hang out at the pyramids and have a fun time. And then, oh, crap, scum's here. Guess we gotta do this. Well, I saved the girl.
Yeah. And the girl, of course, is named Tracy. Not that we're getting creepy or anything. But for this episode, Eric and I watched the second set of 007 episodes of Bond, James Bond, Jr. He always says that Jr. apologetically, too.
He should.
So we watched episodes 8 through 14. So, what were your initial impressions of Location Danger?
I'll be honest, this one was probably one of my favorites of the 14 that we've watched thus far. It
really?
I don't know if it was just because it was the first one I'd watched in a long time, because there was such a big break between when we watched the first 7 and when I started watching these. But I was almost getting into it a little bit. I was like, all right, this is going to be fun, all right. And then by the end of the episode, I was like, oh, okay, well, I kind of remember what this was all about. And then I watched another 6 episodes, and I was like, oh my gosh, why did we do this to ourselves? I will say the majority of these episodes are very similar. They follow a very predictable kind of line straight through the story where you pretty much know what's going to be going on. This one had a little feel of another thing that we watched for this show in the past when we were discussing Bond's inspirations, so to speak. I felt there was a little Fu Manchu action going on in this one. I don't know how you felt about that, but the whole thing of him kidnapping the professor to force him to show him how to use the galaxy defense system to reprogram it or whatever. I thought that had a little flair of that, and so I kind of enjoyed that a little bit.
I think that's fair. Now, and of course we start with the generic any kind of hero story where, for some reason, James Bond Jr.'s friends are about to be eaten by cannibals. We never quite figure out how that started. But, of course, James Bond Jr. shows up to save the day in a helicopter while still wearing a tux. He ducked out of a dinner that his uncle was giving a speech at for saving the pythons. You can insert your own phallic reference there. And, of course, James Bond Jr.'s date is the pilot, which makes Tracy jealous to no end. So we have that generic beginning that has no real bearing on the rest of the episode. It's just there to fill time. Now, what we first we have James Bond Jr. and friends going to see a movie called Spy Man. Spy Man, of course, is nothing like James Bond. No, not at all. And in fact, he falls asleep during the movie, which, of course, everyone thinks is kind of rude, especially Gordo's date, Anne Janou. Did we forget to mention that everybody is named after a pun in this story? And, of course, Gordo may be dating her in this episode, but he just kind of lets her go for no apparent reason at all. And this to me made no sense. And I know, we're talking James Bond Jr. It's not supposed to make sense. But Gordo strikes me as a playa, so I didn't get that. Did that bother you at all?
I don't know if I noticed it at the time, honestly. I think it was just kind of pushing the story along, and they have such a short amount of time to work with that I don't read too much into any one thing that happens character-wise, because they don't have really the time to push forward a very character-driven story. I mean, they could if they had tried to spread a story out across more than one episode, but that's just not the way this works. So I wouldn't say that it didn't flag anything for me, but I wasn't paying that close attention to that particular portion of the story. But it's a valid point.
Then once we find out that Anne Janou's father is actually the actor who plays Spy Man, then James Bond Jr. has a bunch of egg on his face, and he feels he has to be all gallant and crap to her, so he offers to take her to her father's birthday party, and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, we have Professor Brain Trust. Yes, they're really good with names here. One of IQ's personal heroes, who is one of the only people on Earth who could possibly reprogram the special space laser satellite, pew, which we've never seen before, pew, pew, called the Galaxy Defense System, bearing no resemblance at all to any James Bond props or the mythical Reagan-era Star Wars missile defense system. And what about this camcorder? Were you as thrown by this camcorder as I was?
I kind of just chalked it up to goofy Bond technology. It was a little, thinking about how big camcorders used to be compared to how small you can make a video camera now. It is kind of a little like, oh, look at that. But it didn't throw me off anything dramatically. Why did I miss something?
The part where it actually records events that occurred a few hours in the past.
That's what you meant. I thought you meant like style or design of it. I was like, no,
I meant the fact that it records fast.
Well, okay, yes. That was the idea that it can pick up residual heat signatures, and that somehow just by picking up heat signatures, it could actually show you what happened, and somehow it shows you exactly the moment that you need it to. Whether you need it to show you when he's demonstrating, he's like, look, this was 5 seconds ago, here you go. And then when they need to, like, let's see what happened 3 hours ago, here we go. It just happened to record the exact right moment. Yeah, that is a little bit of a stretch when it comes to technology. Again, with these shows, I kind of leave my scientific mind at the door before I step inside, because I know if I try to come into this with any type of analytical mindset, I'm going to be severely disappointed and probably leave with a tremendous headache. But yeah, that being said, this was still quite a stretch of technology.
Now, with that said, and this should frighten you a little bit, it was not the first time I have seen this.
I recall seeing something similar to this in some other show or movie at some point as well. I can't for the life of me place it. I don't know if it was like a Star Trek or something like that, but I know somewhere I've seen something similar.
If you have seen the movie I'm thinking of, I will be incredibly impressed, because I didn't think that you trolled the shelves of Les Bad Cinema, as the long-lamented now Blockbuster Video used to call it, as much as I did. And I know you watched some crap, but you thought Zardoz was bad. Do I have a bargain for you? In 1988, a person whose normal forte was animated films, we're talking like the Heathcliff cartoons, that sort of thing, he had a dream. He wanted to expand his horizons beyond animation, and he wanted to make a science fiction movie. Specifically, he made a complete ripoff of RoboCop, which came out the year before, called Rotor, R-O-T-O-R, and it's spelled in caps with periods after each. It's supposed to stand for something. They change what it stands for about 2 or 3 times during the movie. But the RoboCop analog, who is, of course, a bad guy, who's kind of like a Terminator, except he's eaten a lot of donuts. A lot of donuts. When he pulls his sunglasses down, suddenly he can see into the past through heat signatures, something that happened a few hours ago. So he knows where his quarry went that he's chasing. Then he puts his glasses back on and gets back on his motorcycle, and absolutely does not at all look like he belongs in, say, Mad Max or anything like that. Anyone who truly enjoys bad movies, you have to see this. It is such crap. It is such horrible, horrible crap. It is hilarious. Rotor, go see it.
I don't think I've seen that, so it must have been something that was mentioned in some... It had to have been mentioned somewhere else too, because that doesn't sound familiar, yet I do still feel like I've heard this type of technology been created in some other show or movie that I've seen, so I am going to have to figure out where in the heck I saw it, because this seems to be now a reoccurring fake technology that is absolutely ridiculous. It's just the type of thing that somebody somewhere has been like, all right, well, they've put it in enough movies and TV shows now. Got to make it. Got to figure out how to make this. So that would be interesting.
Well, and if you ever see Rotor, I will be interested in hearing what you have to say. Oh, and if you can find it, actually, because it's very hard to find now. But with that said, moving back to Bond, James Bond, Jr., course, the bad guys at SCUM, including the henchperson, Felony O'Toole. Who they don't even have the decency to make her look like Plenty O'Toole. No.
Oh, that would have been nice.
Yeah, not even close. In fact, she's kind of a skinny bitch. I mean, she's just... And so she's the one who gets Professor Braintrust and, of course, Mr. Genu to try and hijack the Galaxy Defense System so that SCUM can hold the planet hostage. And, of course, James Bond Jr. saves the day. There's just so much
But of
here.
course.
To me, this episode played like Never Say Never Again.
All right, I could kind of see that. But it's still, I don't know, for a reintroduction into the series, I think it hit all the right notes to really let you know what you were in for. It didn't give you any false hope that any of the coming episodes were going to be some hidden treasure that we never got to see. So I think it did its job.
Fair enough. So that was episode 8, Location Danger. By the way, if any of you are interested in seeing this, finding them on video in terms of legit video is not
like
necessarily the easiest or cheapest thing to do. However, there's a site called youtube.com.
What?
And,
Tell me more.
If you don't necessarily care about the quality of the video and we're interested in seeing what happens when you put a camcorder in front of a television or something like that.
Hey, now, not all of them were that bad. Most of them were solid VHS transfers.
Fair enough. But you may, if you were so inclined, be able to find the entire series on YouTube.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah, that's how I watched them. Was all on YouTube, which made it convenient because I was able to watch them on my phone, and watching them on a smaller screen definitely helpful for the quality issues.
Yeah, you don't want to waste your 1080p HD TV 55-inch screen on this. You really don't.
You will claw your eyes out if you try to watch these on a large screen in high definition, because it will be just like, okay, I think that's James Bond Jr. I think those 3 giant pixels right there are supposed to be Tracy. No, watch this on a small screen. Laptop, phone, tablet maybe. I wouldn't even, most people's computer monitors are probably too big for this. I would say keep it 13 inches or under, and you'll be a lot happier in general.
That's what she said.
Oh.
Moving right along. Let's go to another phallic symbol. That would be episode 9, the unfortunately titled The Eiffel Missile. Why do I say unfortunately titled? Because the
episode
secret
lives up
which
to it.
everybody is trying to figure out is given away by the title. Not that it would take many people who have any idea what Paris looks like whatsoever. I mean, even if they've seen one picture, to figure out what's going to go on here.
Yes. Yeah, title aside, I mean, if you saw the title beforehand, you'd be like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. Even if you didn't see the title beforehand, as soon as you hear what the evil plot is, you're like, oh, I know what they're going to do. And yet, the characters are entirely clueless until right when it happens. They're like, oh, now I get it. I'm like, you guys are idiots. Like, super idiots. Even the smart one is an idiot. What the heck is going on here?
Now, with that said, there are lots of dumb elements in here, but I found these more entertainingly dumb. And, okay, yeah, as we're supposed to do for every episode, I groaned when we got the girl's name. Marcy Beaucoup. Ba-dum-bum. But there were some moments that I really, really liked. Like, for example, during the boat chase, there is a flashback to From Russia with Love, the flare gun shooting the fuel drums. That was awesome. I like that they did that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I did enjoy that, although it almost serves to legitimize the show a little bit too much for my taste. But other than that, I think it was pretty good.
And, of course, we have Gordo Lighter just reminding us what a surfer duty is, because let us find a gendarme. Never mind that. Let's call a cop. Wow.
Totally
and
did.
If you don't get that, please look up gendarme on Google and slap yourself for not knowing what that meant to begin with. But that's not the pun, and is not nearly as bad as the French accents, which are just terrible. As most French accents are in movies and television, to be honest.
Yeah, all of the accents are pretty bad. I mean, I even think the English accents are fairly bad in this show. So to say the French accents, to call them out as being exceptionally bad, I think is perfectly fair, because as bad as every other one is, the French ones were even worse. So yes, bad casting, whoever you were.
Now, I really don't have much more to say about the Eiffel missile. Do you?
No. I mean, if you haven't figured it out yet, the bad guy wanted to shoot a missile off. They couldn't find the missile because they had no idea where he was going to shoot it off from. And they
needed a giant piece of scaffolding.
Yes, they needed a giant... Yes, they knew that they couldn't find this giant piece of scaffolding. This isn't a well-hidden giant piece of scaffolding. This is where we're not talking about a satellite dish being hid in a lake or anything like that. That's totally reasonable. We're talking about hiding a giant piece of scaffolding right in the middle of Paris. Gee, where could that be? Yeah, it was the Eiffel Tower. Shh, don't tell. Yeah, it was ridiculously over the top. Like, it's right there, guys. Oh, what's wrong with you? And just kind of, other than that, it was just kind of a boring storyline. So it wasn't even a good storyline with a ridiculous aspect to it. It was just a ridiculous storyline that was utterly ridiculous due to that aspect. So all in all, definitely not one of my favorites, and that's saying a lot when it comes to this particular series. So
now, with that said, our next episode, episode 10, was actually one of my two favorites out of this bunch, even though it's bad, and that is A Worm in the Apple.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is an episode that, quite frankly, you couldn't make anymore. Why? Because I think somebody might object when they realize that the plot was about a terrorist who is about to take down the tallest building in New York City.
Yikes. Yeah, it's one of those things that... I wouldn't say we're overly sensitive about it, because it's something to be sensitive about. I'm not trying to minimize that at all. However, it's not exactly the first time, the attacks on September 11th, 2001 were not the first time anybody had ever envisioned the idea of an attack in that fashion. It had been done before in movies, television shows. It had been done before in books and stories. And
in wartime, for that matter.
Yeah, so it's it wasn't a unique idea. It wasn't something that these terrorists came up with off the top of their head, like, hey, nobody's done this before. Nobody had done it in real life on such a grand scale before, but certainly the idea had been there. So, yes, this episode obviously made well before that. They probably wouldn't make it again in that same way, simply because of the subject matter.
Yeah, and that subject matter is an evil person named the Worm, who has this unfortunate thing where if he takes his glasses off, he can't stand bright light, at least whenever the story remembers that that's supposed to be a problem for him.
Bright light.
Yeah, but he's not as cute as Mogwai. But the fun part here is a different set of glasses that IQ makes. Now, the way that James Bond Jr. ends up in New York City is that Phoebe, who is, of course, the Moneypenny type of analog in this series, she's the more... I don't want to use this word, but the cartoon wants you to think this way. She's the more homely, mousy girl of the group who has a hopeless crush on James that he never notices. And her father owns the building that is being dedicated in New York that is, of course, meant to be blown up. And so she says, why don't we all go? And only some of them get to go. So James gets to go, but of course Tracy gets left behind, with IQ no less. But IQ has made these wonderful glasses that James Bond Jr. can wear, which when he wears them, they of course transmit a signal so that IQ can see exactly what he sees on his computer monitor. Yes, Google Glass 20 years early. And so he puts on these glasses, and of course, whenever Tracy is looking to see what's going on, because of course she's spying on her boyfriend because this is ethical, she's seeing a misconstrued scene, like she sees a moment where Bond Jr. is in a nightclub, and she looks through the glasses, and there's this very, very buxom blonde, and she's kissing the person wearing the glasses, and she's like, James, how could you? And then we cut back to the club, and James takes the glasses back from someone he loaned them to, who's like, cool shades, man.
Yeah, that was again another obvious use of the technology, but it was at least a little fun. It was kind of like, oh, that's cute. If they're going to have that technology, might as well play around with it a little bit.
Now, with that said, I have to say I was kind of impressed with where they went with it at the very end, because, let's face it, James Bond Jr. is kind of a dick. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. He keeps basically flaunting all these other women in front of Tracy. He's not very well-mannered for all of his decent manners. And so what he does, when he knows that Tracy has been spying on him through the monitor for the glasses, is he gives the glasses to Coach Mitchell, the giant black man, Coach Mitchell, before he walks into the men's shower room. And Tracy goes, "Oh my goodness!" Something for the adults in the audience to get a good chuckle over.
Yeah. Basically, anytime you have hidden camera action, you're going to have some fun. But, yeah, all in all, I don't know. It was a fun episode, but I don't know if it would be one of my top ones. So it sounds like you enjoyed this one a little bit more than I did.
I did, and I did so despite the fact that it featured a fair amount of Trevor Noseworthy, whom I can't stand. Of course, all he wanted to do was get to FAO Schwartz, because, of course, he wanted to go play with toys, and I can totally understand that. But despite the Trevor Noseworthiness, I kind of enjoyed this episode, and I'm not quite sure why. I just did.
That's fair, though, because none of these episodes are... This is the type of show you watch out of almost a morbid curiosity, and you have to find reasons to enjoy it. And so, hey, if you found a reason to enjoy that episode, more power to you.
Which brings us up to episode 11, and that is Valley of the Hungry Dunes.
This one had my absolute favorite name of any episode that we've watched thus far.
And now, the funny part is, I know what name you're thinking of. I'll let you say it, but what I don't think you remembered, and what I think the producers don't want us to remember, we've met this character before, or at least someone with the same name. The last time we went to Egypt, the character with the same name showed up. He had a lot of cars.
Oh, that's right.
Now, I don't think they mean it to be the same character, but maybe they do. Or maybe they just hoped we didn't notice, or maybe they just wrote these and didn't know what order they were going to be put in. That's been pulled on audiences before. But please, continue.
Well, the name in question, whether it's been used before or not, is still one of the best ones yet. And that is, of course, Chic Ya Booty. Chic Ya Booty. Chic Ya Booty all night long. That's just a fun name. I'm sure it's not very culturally sensitive. I'm going to imagine. I'm just going to go ahead and go out on a limb here and say that it's probably a little bit racist. But it's hilarious.
And you know, if Shake Your Booty wants to host a dance party and Pussy Galore showed up, I'd be good with that.
All right. I'd be down. I'd be down.
Now, of course, we don't have Pussy Galore showing up in this. No, this is a whole new world, so we have Princess Jasmine.
Mm-hmm, of course. Princess Jasmine Your Booty. Wait, that could go really wrong, I think. So this episode is actually entitled Quantum of Solace. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Valley of the Hungry Dunes, where... sorry, the plot got me a little confused there for a moment.
And isn't that interesting? You gotta wonder, did Quantum of Solace possibly steal from... We don't want to think about that.
Yeah, the guy's like, we really need a new Bond movie. He's like, I really don't feel like writing anything. Hey, let's just Google James Bond. What's this, James Bond Jr.? Well, check this out. Stealing the water supply in a desert. All right, I can dig it.
Yeah. Now, with that said, we have... In the country of Alkaline, as in Alkaline, Dr. No, who still looks like a green space alien, possibly the grown-up version of the green space alien that sometimes showed up in Flintstones episodes, yes. And Jaws, and...
Wiki what?
Knick-Knack? Except he's not a midget. He's an old dude with a big chin, lots of stubble. He's kind of big. At least with Oddjob... Even if they turned him into a gangster rapper, I can kind of picture him, okay, this is still Oddjob in some kind of way. And, okay, Jaws, I can kind of picture. But did this look like anything like Knick-Knack to you?
Not remotely. It was more of just I guess they really, really want to use the name, but it didn't fit anything. They told the animators, here's what Knick-Knack looks like. And they're like, no, here's what we're going to draw him like because we feel like it.
And then, of course, you pointed out something about Gordo in this episode when you first watched it.
What was that?
You'd mentioned that he was kind of rapey.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I had forgotten about that. But yes, he was getting a little over rambunctious there. I felt he was getting a little bit creepy.
Yeah, the veils say no, but the eyes say yes. Gordo, tone it down, dude.
Yeah.
This is meant for kids. I mean, and even for adults, that's not cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little bit... It did take you out of the moment, especially you're watching a cartoon and you see that kind of thing and you're like, well, come on, Gordo, come on, dude. Don't be a bra, be a dude, come on.
But, of course, instead of saying anything about yes, we have Doctor No! Yes, they actually did that.
Of course, you have to.
And that's really... I think you hit it right on the nose. The best part about this episode is the name Shake Your Booty.
Shake your booty.
Because other than that, I've got nothing on this episode. It's just, it's there.
You got a fun name and you got Rapey Gordo. That's really all you got. Not much else to this movie. This episode. It was kind of lackluster other than that, so... Yeah, an easy pass if you're going to, if you're not going to watch every single episode, if you're just skipping around, this is one I would recommend passing on.
Speaking of ones that you can pass on, I also didn't particularly care for episode 12, which is Pompeii and Circumstance. What did you think?
This was another very, very forgetful one. Forgettable one, I'm sorry. I'm so forgetful, I'm forgetting the word forgettable. No, it was a very forgettable episode for me. It just kind of... It passed before my eyes, and nothing really sunk in. Like, I think I actually ended up watching at least half of this twice, because I was like, wait, was I just watching this? What happened? And I would rewind and watch it again, and still not actually take in what was happening in front of me. It was just, there was nothing extremely notable about it, which I guess means that it wasn't even bad enough to be notable in its badness. I guess that's really the best compliment I could give this episode. But yeah, it was just kind of a forgettable episode for me.
Yeah, and if you want to know what you're forgetting, it's Trevor Noseworthy inviting the gang to his family's summer home in Italy so he can babysit Fifi the dog, the very, very spoiled dog. Yes. And the dog gets to ride in a limo. Everyone else doesn't get to ride in the limo. It's just... Like I said, I don't like Trevor, and I think the gags they're just dull. Mm-hmm. So, in this episode, instead of a watch, IQ adds gadgets to James Bond's sports car, including sure grip tires, which can drive on the ceiling of a cave. Think about that.
As one does. Yeah, I can totally see that being a totally legitimate technology. I mean, we saw it in Men in Black. And that was a totally realistic movie as well. So, I totally see that happening.
And our villain is the Worm, once again, except instead of undermining the tallest building in New York, he wants to undermine the secret treasury room of Pompeii so he can steal the stuff. And yeah, okay, fine. Whatever. Like I said, I just didn't enjoy this episode. In one eyeball, out the other. Get me a bag of hamburgers or some Scooby snacks, please.
Yeah, definitely not anything special. Another very skippable episode, I would say, unless you're like us and watching them straight through in order. Really no reason to stop on this one. Nothing exceptionally... Like some of these other episodes... I'm not saying that any of these episodes are so great you have to watch them, but some of them are so bad you really should watch them because it's fun. These two here, number 11 and number 12, I'd say very easy to skip. Whatever. Forget about them.
Yeah. Now we move on to episode 13, which is an improvement over 11 and 12. It's called Never Give a Villain a Fair Shake, and it's kind of, sort of, a ripoff of A View to a Kill.
A little bit, yeah.
In that our evil villain, Walker D. Plank...
Still one of my favorite James Bond Jr. villains, I think.
I actually like him better than some full-on James Bond villains, and that frightens me. I think if you put Walker D. Plank in place of Stromberg, that would be hilarious.
Oh, let's not go there. Oh, my goodness gracious, that would be
hilarious.
Entertaining, though. Atlantis would have a much different look. But in this one, Walker D. Plank has gotten himself a hold of a earthquake device.
And, of course, that earthquake device is the invention of Professor Firma, whose daughter, Terry Firma, is kidnapped by Jaws, so that, of course, the villain can use her as leverage so the professor can be made to do what the villain wants. Fu Man Plank, I guess.
I feel we've heard this before. Yes.
Yeah, and, of course, we have wonderful quotes from Tracy. Another girl? We can't take James anywhere. But of course, James is checking out the girls' butt while they're crawling through a duct together, and we have a wonderful line from Trevor, "I'm too privileged to die." Now, for those of you who have been paying really close attention, you'll have noticed that we only actually talked about 6 episodes of James Bond Jr. Dun 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 dun. Why is that? Well, it's because that curse we talked about at the beginning of the episode, it struck again. Either that or SCUM did, one or the other. Either way, sometime in the middle of discussing the 7th episode of James Bond Jr. that we were going to be talking about, in other words, the 14th episode of the entire series, the recording cut out, and we didn't know it. So we went on to discuss that, and another 40 minutes worth of stuff, and all the recording got was silence. Now, we didn't want to deprive you of another show on time, so what we decided to do is cut this one short, unfortunately. So you will have to hear about James Bond Jr.'s lesbian nemesis on the next time that we do a Fun for the Whole Family episode. And you will also get to hear about that other special thing we were going to talk about that I don't think we ever quite got around to identifying in that next episode as well. But we really do appreciate all of you being there for us and bearing with us as we've had a few technical difficulties these last couple of months. But we do think that we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and that it's not a train and that Moneypenny is not going to shoot us off the train that we happen to be riding on because, that's been done before. And we really... Now, on the other hand, maybe that would be the way for me to play all the way through 007 Legends without any cheat codes. But maybe not. But hey, if you do have those cheat codes, by all means, do send them to me at ziggy@cinemaontherocks.com. You can also find me on Twitter at cinemaotr. You can also email Eric at hermajestiespod.com. You can find us on hermajestiespod.com on the interwebs. You can also find us at facebook.com/hermajestiespod. Hey, you notice a pattern here? It's the same pattern we've always been talking about. But in any case, that's going to do it for this truncated and very cursed episode of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast. Come to think of it, I wonder if Mr. Big might be involved. Was he ever in James Bond Jr.? I guess we'll find out eventually. But in any case, I'm Ziggy Berkeley, and my co-host is Eric Dewey, and we will see you next time on Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network.